קם אדם בבוקר ומרגיש כי הוא עם, הוא מתחיל ללכת, ולכל הנפגש בדרכו קורא ושלום.
Hello everyone. I'm Cantor Jeremy Burko from Beth Radom congregation in Toronto. Before we get started, I just wanted to wish everyone out there on behalf of myself, our esteemed Rabbi Dr. Jeffrey Haber, and our entire congregation, a Chag Sameach to all. And most critically, blessings for good health and safety to the Jewish people, to all Canadians, and indeed to everyone, every race, every religion, every creed, all around the world during these very strange and challenging times. While our building has been shut down, however, our community programming has never been more active as it has transitioned into the virtual world. Our programming includes daily socializing on Zoom, Kabbalat Shabbat and Havdalah services, adult education courses led by the rabbi and myself, a book club, a weekly live variety show, children's programming, and so much more. To learn more about us and join in on our programs and activities, find us on the web at www.bethradom.com and sign up to receive our newsletter. And now, a quick disclaimer. Shabtai Tzvi and Sabbateanism is a fascinating subject to learn about, but it can also be a little bit uncomfortable. It's a bizarre, racy, disturbing story full of ideas considered heretical by most Jews today, and has an impact on modern Judaism today that some of us might prefer not to acknowledge. To be as objective as we can be, our treatment of this topic today comes not from a religious perspective, but from an historical and psychological perspective. It may not be appropriate for children or anybody who might be bothered by a discussion of Jews who express views considered heretical to modern mainstream Jewish ideologies. And with that, I warmly welcome you to a mind-boggling topic of Sabbateanism, the heretical Jewish secret society. Today, whether we like it or not, Jewish belief, ideology, and practice can be seen as a wide spectrum. A Jew can be Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, Modern Orthodox, Reconstructionist, Hasidic, Yeshivish, Liberal, Karlbachian, Renewal, Secular, or one of the many more strange and diverse and different denominations and sects. Disagreements between the denominations abound over just about every aspect of Jewish belief and practice. But despite these differences, there are a few fundamental points on which the greater Jewish community seems to agree as a whole, such as the belief in one God, or the infinite nature of God, and also the centrality of Torah in Jewish life and in culture. Even among those Jews who do not personally believe in these basic Jewish theological principles, they often still agree that while they may not necessarily espouse these beliefs, they would all say that these fundamental beliefs help to define Judaism as distinctive from other religions and cultures. One more idea among these seemingly universal Jewish beliefs is that unlike Christianity, Jews believe that Jesus is not the Jewish Messiah, or Mashiach as we call in Hebrew. Nevertheless, there are people and organizations, such as the infamous Messianic Jews, also known as Jews for Jesus, who claim to be part of the Jewish community and who do in fact teach that Jesus is the Mashiach, and that we should all be waiting for his return. As most of us know, Jews for Jesus as an organization and as a belief is not at all recognized as part of the greater Jewish community by any Jewish group. And so it should remain as long as they pervert Jewish ideology, target and cheat Jews out of their birthright, their heritage, their community, their spirituality, their money, and their families, all while being supported under the table by Christian missions. But while we can justifiably condemn Jews for Jesus as illegitimate and predatorial, we are still left to confront one very fair question that the Jews for Jesus organization raises. If the concept of a Mashiach, in general, is, in fact, a legitimate part of authentic Judaism, how should the greater Jewish community regard a new sect that pops up claiming to have identified a new Mashiach? I acquired this coin some years ago from an ancient artifacts dealer in Jerusalem. In the year 134 CE, this coin was overstruck from a Roman coin as an act of Israelite defiance of the Roman Empire. It was the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, as the Israelite general Shimon Bar Kokhba, officially dubbed the Mashiach by none other than the legendary Rabbi Akiva himself, led the Jewish people in a retaliatory campaign against the Roman Empire in an attempt to reconquer the land of Judea for the Jewish people. On this side of the coin, there is an image of a bunch of grapes with the Hebrew words Shana Bet Lecherut Yisrael, the second year of a free Israel. And on the other side, a 7-branched palm tree with the initials Shin Bet Chaf, Shimon Bar Kokhba, all written using a Proto-Semitic Hebrew alphabet. Ultimately, the Bar Kokhba campaign failed, and the Jewish rebellion was destroyed, and with it the messianic ambitions of Shimon Bar Kokhba. But even though history may have proven Bar Kokhba to have been a false messiah, this does not change the fact that for a few years, it seems, all Jews recognized him as the Jewish Messiah. But we needn't go back so long into our history to find an example of a Jewish Messiah. Today, in the homes and synagogues and publications of many Jewish people who identify as part of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, we likely find this image, with the words Yechi HaMelech HaMashiach. This is a portrait of the great Chabad leader Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, Zichrono Livracha. And the Hebrew phrase means, long live the King, the Messiah. The belief that the great Rebbe was in fact the Mashiach grew in the Chabad movement beginning in about the 1980s. And while it is unclear how central the idea still is today among modern Chabad adherents, the Rebbe's return to complete the Messianic mission remains a mainstream belief among the approximately 100,000 members of the Chabad Lubavitch movement around the world. All this is to say that while the idea of crowning a Messiah and the King of the Jews might seem a very bizarre idea to most of us, it's actually nothing new. It certainly doesn't happen all the time, but it is completely understandable how it makes sense for any civilization, once in an age or so, to nominate a particularly gifted leader during a particularly difficult time to call for action and unity among its people, and bestow that one person with special authority of both religious and political significance. But who's to say what such a person might ultimately do with that kind of power and attention? This brings us to the curious and bizarre case of Shabtai Tzvi and the Sabbatean movement that followed him. Shabtai Tzvi was born in 1626 in the town of Smyrna, modern-day Turkey, but then a part of the Ottoman Empire. His father was a humble chicken farmer, and his brothers grew up to become successful merchants. Shabtai Tzvi, however, followed his own very different path. As a youth, he was a successful student and became reasonably well-versed in Torah and Talmud, but personally, he was highly eccentric, unusually attached to his mother, prone to fits of deep depression that could shift dramatically into excited euphoria, what we might call today manic-depressive tendencies, or perhaps bipolar personality disorder. At the same time, history also paints Shabtai Tzvi as a uniquely handsome man, silver-tongued, and with a gift for singing. But while these gifts and scholarship enabled his family to arrange 2 marriages for him, both ended in divorce after only a few months due to his bizarre antisocial behavior. In his mid-20s, Shabtai Tzvi began to seriously draw the ire of the Smyrna Jewish community as he became to be drawn to breaking religious taboos, such as uttering the ineffable name of God, and for the first time claiming to be the Mashiach, the Messiah. Sometime in the early 1650s, Shabtai Tzvi was finally banished from his hometown for all of his social disturbances. Wherever Shabtai Tzvi relocated, first to Salonika, Greece, and then to Constantinople, his behavior infuriated the local Jewish communities, ultimately leading to another banishment. His antics included conducting a marriage ceremony between himself and a Sefer Torah under a chuppah, celebrating all 3 pilgrimage festivals together in 1 week, proclaiming the abolishment of the fast of Asara B'Tevet, and of course, continuing to proclaim himself the Messiah. Shabtai Tzvi eventually made his way to Jerusalem, where his eccentricities were more tolerated, viewed by the local community as a kind of piety, a bit of a sweet Nebuch case. In 1662, the leadership of the Jerusalem Jewish community decided to entrust him to carry a missive to the Jewish community in Cairo, a mission which he dutifully carried out without incident. But on his return trip, Shabtai Tzvi decided to make a scheduled rest stop in Gaza because while in Cairo, he fatefully learned of a great rabbi of Gaza who had been rumored to have a cure for people with behavioral problems. And this is when our story starts getting really interesting. Because the world has always been full of eccentric and nutty people like Shabtai Tzvi, the majority of whom we've never heard of because the world is too serious a place to have the patience to indulge them. That is, unless the social and political climate is just right. And even then, they need just the right kind of publicist to sell their message. Shabtai Tzvi was about to meet his publicist and become the right person at precisely the right time. You see, in the 16th and 17th centuries, this was an absolutely miserable time for the Jewish people. In 1492, the Spanish Inquisition forced some 200,000 Jews from their homes. In 1493, another 37,000 Jews were kicked out of Sicily. And from 1498 to 1526, all Jews were expelled from France, Hungary, Croatia, and Slovakia. Meanwhile, Jews in Italy, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Germany, and Russia were on very tenuous ground, some being exiled only to be allowed back a few years later, or forced to permanently relocate to Jewish ghettos. Throughout the entire 16th century, a huge percentage of Jewish people were wanderers, living out of suitcases and trying desperately to reconstitute their disintegrating communities in at least a moderately tolerant region such as Bulgaria or the Netherlands. Then, in 1648, just before Shabtai Tzvi was expelled from Smyrna, Ukrainian Cossacks, led by Bohdan Khmelnytsky, began attacking Jewish villages. By 1655, the Khmelnytsky massacres left 100,000 Jews dead and 300 Jewish communities destroyed across Eastern Europe. This means that as Shabtai Tzvi began attracting attention for his antics, the Jewish world was hurting in a severe way and desperately craving an end to its suffering. As it also turns out, a new form of study was sweeping the Jewish world called Kabbalism, and it spread very quickly by means of an amazing new invention called a printing press. This mystical Lurianic Kabbalah, originating out of Tzfat, was teaching that the repairing of the world was not only possible, but that it was imminent, that the Mashiach would soon arrive, a man born to lead the Jews out of their suffering and into a new era of prosperity and unity. To sum up, the Jewish people were suffering while being told that the Mashiach would be arriving at any moment. Jews around the world were ready for a Mashiach. And you might even say that they were actively searching for one who was nutty enough to take the job. By the time Shabtai Tzvi was about to make his return trip from Cairo to Jerusalem, he had already been claiming to be the Messiah for more than 20 years, and still hadn't managed to attract any kind of following. And that is because, as we said, there's still one critical piece of the puzzle that he was missing: a publicist, a person with the reputation, the intelligence, and the means to legitimize and sell his crazy message in just the right way to make it actually believable. On his journey back to Jerusalem, Shabtai Tzvi made a stop to meet Rabbi Natan of Azza, Rabbi Nathan of Gaza, who is supposedly skilled at helping people with mental illness. Their meeting takes place, of all times, during a Tikkun Leil for Shavuot. Surprise, surprise. Just as we are all here doing right now. Natan of Azza enters a deep trance and prophesies that Shabtai Tzvi is indeed the Messiah, the Mashiach. From this moment on, Shabtai Tzvi's life becomes the most bizarre kind of campaign for presidency. Natan of Azza claims he has discovered a new mystical book from the 12th century that describes Shabtai Tzvi as the Messiah. Later, it would be revealed, of course, that he wrote the book himself. But the devious campaign strategy had already worked. Shabtai Tzvi was speaking in front of audiences organized by Natan of Azza, and he was gaining a following. In one of his fits of euphoria, he reportedly appointed each of his closest friends as the new kings of each European country. Shlomi, you get to be the new king of Spain. Herschel, you get to be the new king of France. His popularity continued to rise so dramatically that even those who knew him from the time living in Smyrna, Jerusalem, or Constantinople as nothing more than an unwell malcontent, they were forced to join the bandwagon. News of Shabtai Tzvi circulated the entire Jewish world, and there were even rumors that the 10 lost tribes had revealed themselves and were descending from the mountains to join Shabtai Tzvi's messianic mission. In 1666, only about 2 years after Shabtai Tzvi began his official messianic campaign, he was ready for the ultimate endgame and the fulfillment of his messianic duty, the restoration of a free and independent state of Israel. The province of Palestine, however, was under the rule of the Sultan in Constantinople, and Shabtai Tzvi would either have to negotiate with him or go to war with the Ottoman army. So, with the entire Jewish nation in support, Shabtai Tzvi set sail for Constantinople to demand an audience with Sultan Mehmed IV. As we can imagine, though, the Sultan was not very interested in listening to Shabtai Tzvi's deranged demands, and instead had him arrested. Shabtai Tzvi was brought to the Sultan's palace in chains and given a choice: convert to Islam or, you guessed it, die. Shabtai Tzvi chose, surprisingly, conversion, and in a public spectacle he donned the Muslim turban, recited the Hazzan, and shocked a disillusioned and once again demoralized Jewish nation who were forced to then return to their regular lives. That's it. That's the story of Shabtai Tzvi. All that build-up and no bang. Well, that is for most of the Jewish world. The trouble is, of course, that as we all know, it is easier for some people to let go of a dream than others. As it turned out, some of the die-hard believers in Shabtai Tzvi refused to believe that this was the end of the man and his message. But let's put a pin in that one just for a moment, because we haven't really yet talked about exactly what that message was and why it caused such an enormous controversy. Shabtai Tzvi's messianic message revolved around what we call antinomianism, which is, in a way, supposed to be a part of the concept of messianism. But it is also the reason why Shabtai Tzvi's behavior bothered so many people. The Jewish Messiah is supposed to establish a new set of rules for Jewish life and living. The end times messianic era, it's supposed to be that things were once not kosher are suddenly supposed to be now kosher. Or some of the holidays that we observed before are either not going to be observed at all or observed in a very different way. Or even supposedly we were going to enter into a new covenant with God or have an entirely new Torah. And this means that all of the rules, or at least the old rules, have to be set aside. His entire life, Shabtai Tzvi's mental illness compelled him to break the rules of Judaism, which, of course, irritated and infuriated his community. Shabtai Tzvi's messianic message of antinomianism taught that, in order to bring about the Kabbalistic concept of takana, the repairing of the world, it must be done through willful sin. There are a number of examples of this in the Torah, such as the story of Rivka and Yaakov conspiring together to trick Yitzchak into giving Yaakov the greater blessing, or the story of Joseph's brothers selling him into slavery so that one day he would be able to be second in command of the Pharaoh in Egypt, or even Queen Esther, who marries a non-Jewish king, Ahasuerus, in order to save the Jewish people from Haman. In Shabtai Tzvi's case, and we have to remember that we're talking about 350 years ago, his antinomian message included equal participation in religious services for women, the abolishment of the Jewish priestly and Levite classes, and the canonization of secular Castilian love songs, to name just a few. It should not be lost on any of us that to some extent these Sabbateanisms have become normative in many Jewish communities today who support egalitarianism, allow a Bat Kohen or a Bat Levi to receive the first 2 aliyot to the Torah, or who permit synagogue prayers to be sung to the tunes of modern-day secular songs. Of course, some of the antinomian ideas Shabtai Tzvi supported are still very strange to us, like pronouncing the ineffable name of God, or changing around the rules of religious holidays and his self-deification. But even these, for the moment, might not sound too traumatizing. But don't worry, we're about to fall deeper down the rabbit hole. Shabtai Tzvi's forced conversion to Islam in 1666 turned off the overwhelming majority of his supporters, but not all of them. The support of Shabtai Tzvi that he had galvanized over his 2-year campaign had largely been through populism. The Jewish rabbinic authority had, for the most part, maintained a strong opposition to Shabtai Tzvi and his message, which was, in their eyes, disturbing and dangerous. Following the conversion to Islam, the rabbinic authority quickly regained their authority as the Jewish community was once again in need of their leadership. The authority decreed that Sabbatean ideology was prohibited, leaving only a few small enclaves of Sabbatean devotees that dared remain in the public eye, pushing the rest of the Sabbatean followers into an underground secret society where they continued to study and develop Kabbalism through the lens of antinomianism, and from where they could disseminate new publications that would carefully weave normative Jewish ideologies with new Kabbalistic Sabbatean antinomian concepts, such as questioning the oneness of God, or questioning the supreme power of God, or even giving rise to occult-like practices that included orgies and other ritualized acts of intentional sin. Now wait, hold on. I can hear the question burning through your screen. How did we get to orgies? If this secret society of Sabbatean followers really existed, how is it that we know anything like this about them? How could we possibly know about secret occult orgies? The truth is that the accounts of ritual crypto-Sabbatean orgies may or may not be true, but it was a narrative that the rabbinic authority used at the time to demonize crypto-Sabbateans. Much like the 20th century McCarthy era, the rabbinic authority was not about to let these crypto-Sabbateans live in peace, particularly if they were actively trying to corrupt normative Jewish ideology by publishing books that masqueraded as mainstream rabbinic texts, while secretly weaving in Sabbatean teachings. Some 18th century rabbis, whose texts some of you likely even have on your bookshelves, like that of Tfilas Beis Yaakov, the quintessential commentary on the Siddur, was written by Yaakov Emden, who spent most of his life exposing and excommunicating crypto-Sabbateans. Esteemed rabbis like Yaakov Emden, Moshe Haggis, these guys were instrumental in documenting the activities of and exposing known 18th century crypto-Sabbateans, such as Samuel Jacob Falk, also called the Baal Shem of London, as well as Bosnian-born Nehemiah Chia Bar Chiyun, who managed to infiltrate the leadership of the Sephardic Jewish community of Amsterdam. It should also be mentioned at this point, though, that like any witch hunt, the reputations of some prominent Jewish leaders were destroyed over accusations of being crypto-Sabbateans, later to be proven innocent. Leaders like Rabbi Yonatan Eibeshutz, chief rabbi of Hamburg, Altona, and Wandsbek. And most sadly, the great genius of his era, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal, who after being falsely accused was forbidden to teach or publish any further works for 20 years, and who died at age 39, just before his 20 years were up. It has been my pleasure to offer to my community dedicated classes on each of these stories, supported by artifacts and historical records of these amazing and bizarre instances of the 18th century Jewish witch hunters and their victims. But perhaps my most favorite was the study of what began as a small Jewish community in Salonika, who continued to follow Shabtai Tzvi after his conversion. You see, Shabtai Tzvi began to claim that his conversion to Islam was, in fact, part of his messianic plan all along, and that his message was meant not only for Jews, but for all people of all Abrahamic faiths. A small group of Jews from Salonika took this message seriously and also converted to Islam. They became known among the other Muslim Turks as the Dunme, literally translating as the unrighteous converts. But within their community, they called themselves the Ma'aminim, the believers. As a community, the Dunme still exists today, following the teachings of Shabtai Tzvi, marrying only within their own community, behaving as Muslims in public and as Sabbatean Jews in private. Dunme children are raised as Muslims, and the secret of their ancestry is revealed to them on their 18th birthday. Their existence has sparked many Jewish conspiracy theories within the Muslim community, and while we still don't have a complete picture of their secret society, their generations of leadership, their customs, their music, and poetry continues to be studied to this day. With that, I wish you all blessings of health and safety during these difficult and unique times. And of course, please everyone have a Chag Sameach.